What up, what up? Jiggy with you for a 4-table 400 video with the topic playing without the initiative. No need for any introduction. It's a good video loaded with stuff, so just go ahead to the action. Enjoy, guys. Hey, guys. Welcome to a new Jiggy video. This one is gonna be 4 tables of NL400, and the concept is pretty simple actually. I want to put some emphasis on playing without the initiative, so I won't be able to 3-bet ever during that video. I'm gonna cold call basically every single hand that I'm gonna be playing against a villain who is opening. I might have initiative in some hands myself because I am gonna be opening myself, but every hand that I intend to play against someone who just opened, I'm just gonna flat that and look at stuff that some people might have some trouble against. Oh, I did not want to see that. Yeah, look at basically because I know it's like a problem that a lot of players have. I think like the common mistake of playing without the initiative, especially at like lower limits. People start getting better when they move up to like, if you move up to 3-6 and up, I think people start getting better at that. But the common mistake most of the time when you don't have the initiative is just to be too tight and giving too much credit to the original raiser, or like playing back too much, and or more specifically playing back in the wrong spots and bad spots. So I'm gonna be flatting. I'll try to widen my flatting range quite a bit, like on the button, plus in the blinds, because I'm gonna try to put some emphasis on playing without initiative in the blinds, from the blinds, against a late or an early opener or whatever. Uh, so yeah, I think that's it. I just plan on doing a one-part thing right now because I really don't know how this will work out and if it will really be interesting and if I will really get some interesting spots basically. If it works out, I'll probably revisit the series sometime soon. If it doesn't work out, well, worse that could happen is that we have a 4-table 2-4 session standard live. So let's see it. I'm gonna try not to like 3-bet out of uh like, I don't know, I don't even know the word in English. Out of being used to 3-bet, so I'm gonna try to not do that. So yep, flatting here. And yep, that's pretty much it for the intro, so let's get to the action. Uh right now, right away, pretty interesting spot here. I've got the flush draw with 2 overs here. Obviously, the like normal question here is whether I call or whether I raise. And playing without the initiative is very often a question of board texture and playing the exact board and what are going to be your possibilities on some board and on some other boards, depending on player or whatever. Here, I prefer a call. I'm going to expand on that a bit more later. Basically, I prefer a call because, uh, wait a second, I've got a couple of spots. Because the way the board is made right now, I'm gonna be able to take down the pot even if I don't hit a pretty high percentage of the time. Plus, I thought like there are some lower flush draws that are gonna like go broke against me if I do raise the flop, but I don't think my equity is that good. Uh, come back on that. I get decision. I think I just have to go broke against that specific guy who might be tempted to play me back. So yeah, I don't have any read against that guy. It's like the very first time I see that name at a table. So I'm not sure yet if I'm gonna value bet. I think like I'm gonna come back on the flop later. I think turn is pretty standard, like float bet. Here I think I'm gonna go with a small value basically, just get him to call any 9 that he might have check call turn with. He's gonna check call turn a lot with stuff like 6, 7, 7s, 8, all of these ends. I don't think he check calls an overpair that often on that turn. So I think I've got a best end pretty much every single time. So I do want to get some value, but I do think he might get scared, might be scared if I bet bigger. But then again, like I said, I've never played against that guy, so I'm just gonna assume he's playing standardly, basically. Here I have to flat because it's the theme of the video. But yeah, coming back on the flop action, because I did not have enough time to talk about it. If the board is like, I don't know, something like, I suck so bad at like inventing hands in my head and trying to come up with fictive boards, so I'm gonna skip that part. But on that specific board, basically, can I resize that? Yeah, that's nice. What I was saying is that if I call, I know I can take the pot away very often, even if I don't hit. Oh. Any card that's gonna put a force trig on the board is gonna be great for me. Any 7, 8, 9 is gonna be great for me for a float. I did go for some thin value there and ended up splitting some thin value, plus I might get some aces high to fold sometimes, so I think the bet is good. But yeah, coming back to that one, by raising, well, like I was saying, I really hate the raise basically because my equity against everything that's getting it in is not that good. I'm kind of flipping at best. I might run into aces and my equity totally sucks against aces or king or stuff like that. If I had a very like nut flush draw myself, I tend to go ahead and raise that just because every king I flush draw is gonna go broke on the flop pretty much 100% of the time, out of position, because it's pretty much the easiest / only way to play it basically. Not the only, depending on a lot of stuff, but it's a way people know most often, so that's how they're gonna play it. So you have to basically, when you don't have initiative, take into account stuff like, I think board texture is basically one of the most important things. Plus, you do have to have a plan for the rest of the end. I think like it's a combination of those two factors who is gonna like make you a better player without initiative. And like I explained, I preferred a call on that flop for those reasons. I'm gonna flat that. I mean, it's pretty thin. I don't flat that often. Suit, I'm gonna flat like 100 or 3 bet. It's pretty thin, but I do want to get some examples in for the purpose of the video. Here I went for a smaller raise because those two guys looked like fishes. I just want to sweeten the pot in case I do hit something, and I did hit something. I don't think he's going away with any pair on that flop, so I'm gonna like size a bit bigger there. If he has an ace, of course, he's never ever going away. And I'm pretty sure he calls like one of these two guys actually are gonna call at least one street with basically any pair. So I do want to size pretty big, and I don't have to get to be balanced there because I'm basically playing against fishes. I'm gonna check down that. Just received a transfer. Never mind that. And here I might make a play, but I don't have enough time left. I think that's a really good board to try to go ahead and try to make a play. I don't like my hand that much, and I didn't have that much time left, so I'm gonna skip. Here, of course, my like check calling, flipping. That's pretty much out of question. Without any info on the guy, it's pretty tough actually to know what's the best way to play the hand. But I think if I'm against like any random guy, I kind of prefer a lead here because he's gonna peel pretty light most of the time. Any like king queen with one spade is gonna peel the flop and it's like, quote unquote, see what happens on turn. I expect him to raise with like any ace of spades and stuff like that. Not every single time, but quite often. And once again, depends on the guy, like I said. And last thing is, sorry about that. I do think he's checking back most of his air, not hair, sorry, on that board. here against that guy who I kind of know. I think he's just the biggest nit in the world. I think I'm gonna go ahead and shove. I don't think you. I almost folded that. Yeah. Uh, he's just so strong that not shoving, I think, is pretty much wasting money. King of spades. Oh, no king. Yay. 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 I'm gonna celebrate a bit. But yeah, the guy's so tight. He's basically squeezing in another guy here. I don't think I've ever seen him do that without the nuts, and not shoving here just loses me money against kings or queens when an ace flops or like an overcard flops, or against ace king, who I think he's gonna have quite a lot there. So I decided just to shove, and I got lucky, of course. So if I was talking about something else, I've forgotten it. So I hope I was not in the middle of explaining something. No, yeah, I was talking about that hand actually, where I think I kind of prefer dunk lead for the reasons that I've mentioned, especially because on such a like a basically dangerous board where uh, people I think will assume that I'm as the preflop caller is going to peel at least one street pretty often. They're pretty likely to just give up with all of their air, so I don't mind just betting and having them fold, not basically losing like the one street of continuation bet that people might do on more dry boards, more boards that are prone to continuation bets. So so far it's been pretty easy because I've just add the nuts pretty much every single time I play the hand. So I'm gonna try to get into some marginal, much more marginal spots idly. I can't. I did skip a hand at the beginning. If one more hand comes up, I might just skip it because there's not. It's pretty standard, but it's better than saying nothing at all. The ace queen there, yeah. Basically here, when I get raised on that flop, I think it's a good flop to raise as a bluff against an aggressive player, and I do like his play if he made it. Like most of the time, he's gonna be making it as a bluff, basically, if he folds to my re-raise on that board. I do like the play because I basically don't have any equity if I don't have the ace. I'm pretty much done, so he's laying himself pretty good price. If I raise a lot of small blind and c-bet like pretty much 100% of the ace-high boards, he's laying himself a good price on that raise as a bluff. And it's pretty much a, unless some tricky card comes up on the turn, and unless you kind of, like, if MCC, I kind of know the guy, but I don't know exactly how he plays, but if he had like a very, very tight image, that could be a multi-barrel bluff, a spot. Uh, if you're the guy who's near the table, who's recognized at the net, you have to be aware of your own image. And if you're that guy, you want to go ahead and like raise that flop and then just barrel off. Pretty much no matter what happens, you're gonna get a lot of big folds. But if the game is somewhat aggressive, I think it's like a one street bluff basically. That's gonna work out often enough. And you do have to balance that with some thinner value, and I think he's aware of that. And I do think he's gonna make that with like ace jack sometimes, like some flush draw sometimes that he could shove over my re-raise because he just thinks I'm full of shit and stuff like that. So I decided to go ahead and go broke on the flop because, like I said, being an aggressive game between me and him, what I assume is gonna be because he knows me and I kind of know him. I don't think he's gonna fire the turn as bluff very often, so I don't lose like quote unquote the bluff values when I do like go ahead and get it in on the flop. My ace queen there, I think pre-flop standard, like it's my only option basically. Uh, I think the flop is pretty standard too. One thing that I'm gonna go ahead and say, which is really important when you play, when you defend out of position from the blinds, and that a lot of people have a lot of problem with, I think, is not turning your hand face up, basically. I'm against some guys who are barreling a lot and like having good ranges of barreling and stuff. I'm way, way, way happier here to check call on the flop stuff like ace queen and ace jack and maybe even ace 10 than like something like fours or sixes. Uh, one of the main problems basically of people who are too passive or tend to just like defend too many pockets from the blinds, but don't have that much other stuff in their ranges. It's just to be too passive and just like check, reevaluate too often, and just by doing it, turning their hands over way too often, especially against thinking player. When you're up against good regulars, basically, you do want to confuse them because if you play like the ABC, quote unquote, like 2+2 tag style from the blinds, which is to basically polarize your check raising ranges between their like air, big draws and nuts, uh, check calling anything that kind of have showdown value that you want to get bluffs out of, that like you want to get to showdown without building the pot, and like check folding pretty much air sometimes. That's basically like the general consensus, general strategy. Like I said, tag 2+2 strategy. I think nowadays it used to be good basically because people were not that good like after opening from the button or from the cutoff. They were not that good at determining when to barrel, when not to barrel. They tended to have like not bad and strange, and you could have some reads, some like you could check out your low pockets on like one when there's one big card there and hope that he checks, like he just gives up pretty often. I don't think that's true like nowadays, just because like I said, people just got a lot better at doing that kind of stuff, and every time you basically play a hand when you're out of position the way quote unquote it's supposed to be played, I think in my mind you do have like don't fall into the fancy syndrome too. You do have to like play standardly very often, but when you play too standard like every single time, you make life for your opponent so easy. And if you run into a very good opponent, you're just gonna get absolutely crushed so often. It's not even gonna be funny. You do have to vary those things and try some new lines like check raise, something like I don't know, king queen on a king eye dry board and stuff like that, and you're gonna be surprised how much value there can be out of that kind of shit, and how like I don't like the term merging your ranges, but like stopping having totally polarized ranges and put some difficult decisions on the other guys when they do have like top pair no kicker and stuff like that, and stop being afraid of playing out of position too, because that's another big problem of people. Like they're like, oh, if I check raise king queen on that king high board, what am I gonna do if the turn comes basically anything? And the answer is, well, it's gonna depend on the actual answer. I'm not like dodging the answer. The actual answer is it's gonna depend on the turn card and on your opponent and on your image and stuff like that. And the more you do those things, the more you're gonna be used to like playing with those things and analyzing those variables that run into a hand and making the right decisions. Don't go too crazy. Like I said, don't just play every hand backwards because you don't want to turn your hand face up. But you do want to be tough enough to like you want it to be tough for the other guys to play against you when you're out of the blinds, basically, and you defend. Otherwise, it's gonna be like a walk in the park for them. Even the best players, even myself or anyone, basically, I'm gonna say this about myself because I know my game more than any other guy. I know that when I like fall on my B game and my C game, and when I'm not playing as good, it looks like I'm not making any mistakes from the blind. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna check out this once, and then I'm gonna check fold if he barrels again. But the truth is, when I play that straightforward out of that position, I'm just getting raped by the best players in my mind. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I did skip some ends, but I don't think that there were that many interesting spots. Here, this is a perfect spot to bet with my double gutter. Here, I kind of don't like. I'm gonna check that ace jack and come back on it later. I kind of don't like that much a call there because you're just crushed. Like you're just very dominated by his range, and I would fold it pretty much every single time, except when basically I'm making a video with. I do want to get into some marginal spots, so I'm gonna go ahead and call that one. So yep, up, up, up. That is gonna be a call. That is gonna be a call. Those are pretty trivial decisions, I think. And this is gonna be the tough one. Uh, his bet sizing is pretty weird on that turn, actually. I don't know why he's going that big. I think if he was on the bluff, I'm gonna have to fold because it's my first instinct here. Sorry about that. Uh, Here, once again, I don't have, I basically have zero info on the guy. I think I can call two streets and fold to a river bet uh, comfortably. And some hands might like either shut him down or give me some room. I think here I do have to go ahead and bluff the rest of my stack. I do think he's gonna be. I'm not sure if he's gonna find a fold with like aces, just because there are aces, but I do think he's gonna find a fold with ace king quite a lot. And ace king is such a huge part of his range. Just because Jack 10 just got there, I think it's better to turn my hand into a bluff. Just the fact that I'm making him fold ace king most of the time. And once again, I might be wrong here because I don't know the guy that much. But the fact that I'm gonna make him fold ace king because it's such a dry board on the flop. The only way for him to call that shove is to either believe that I'm turning a queen into a bluff, which is pretty unlikely, or believe that I peeled two streets with ace-10 or ace-jack, which is pretty unlikely too, I guess, given the exact nature of that board. And I assume he's a pretty good hand reader because he's on a couple of tables. He's like on 3 of my tables, so he must be a regular. So yeah, given the exact nature on that board, on that flop, and given the fact that I believe he's a pretty good hand reader, I do think he has to basically check fold. If he has king jack, he's definitely gonna check fold that on the river. If he has ace king, he's gonna check fold that as well. I basically think that if he checks, I'm good most of the time, but I basically think he has pretty much 0%. He has 0% check calling range on that river. And once again, I might be wrong, but that's gonna be a case of a whole lot of players on that board. So I did go ahead and change my queen jack into a bluff, and he folded. The turn peel might be a bit, just a bit like light and maybe not profitable, but I still like it actually, just because there are cards that are gonna give me options even if I don't hit like the 9. The 9 is pretty much the perfect example, but something like an 8, 10 or something like that's gonna give me options too. Here what I'm gonna do here against like a pot bet is I'm gonna go ahead and like raise basically the minimum, give him good odds on his draws, like anything with king of clubs, ace of clubs, or stuff like that is gonna like, oh shit, just I would like to have more time back, but yeah, whatever. It was a marginal decision that I just ended up deciding to fold, and looks like that guy just sat in position on me like on purpose, I think, just for the video because he knows I'm making a video right now. So I'm gonna be aware of the fact that he's very likely to play me back, and it might have been a playback, but once again, he might choose like that that possibility, that the fact that basically he knows that I know that he's likely to play me back or whatever, so he might have had something. And his line did so little sense that he probably expects me to look him up like, so he might have had something like, I don't know, a king low suit or stuff like that. I might be wrong. I'm just gonna skip it actually, just because it's useless. Here I don't have any read on Crack Monkey. Once again, he's playing 19-15 on 9-5 hands, so he's most likely kind of a standard tag net. I think my best play here, I don't think he ever has king, just because of combination of like yeah, just because of the combination of like timing plus the fact that I saw it so small on the turn and stuff like that. And this guy is just raising every single swap. It's kind of getting annoying. I did go small. I'm gonna go ahead and explain the table 2 hand while I play the table 4 hand. I'm gonna explain that table 4 hand later, basically. That's gonna be easier than I thought. That's exactly the single best card in the deck. So that is cool. But yeah, I did go ahead and bet that river small because, yeah, like I said, I don't think he pretty much ever has king. I think most people like a guy who I think is gonna tend to play pretty straightforward there is likely to bet that turn if he has a king. Most often with all the draws out there. And if I go ahead and like bet big on the river, if he has any clue of what he's doing, I pretty much, if I go for like a pot bet there, I pretty much have the 10 close to 100% of the time with my check flop. Uh, that sucks. That sucks so bad. I think I do have to go ahead and shove there, actually. I prefer shove to check call, and there are not that many tens in his range. I'm not even sure if he's folding to the board if he doesn't have a 10, but it's better than nothing. And I don't think, like I said, he has that many tens in his range. If the flop was like 9, 7, 6, I would like that a bit less because he will have stuff like 9, 10 in his range and 10 jack and stuff like that. But here I don't think he basically has, like I said, any 10 in his range. Here I think I had to go in and go bro on that flop against a fish. I'm gonna explain why later. A lot of spots actually happening. I'm gonna bet that against a net who is not likely to play back at me. But yeah, I kind of totally lost my train of thought, and that absolutely sucks. That exactly not what I did not want to see. Here, shove. I don't think I'm ever good, and I might be drawing basically almost dead, so I think it's pretty easy fold. I do think it's better to go ahead and go broke. I'm not gonna use my time bank because I have so few, but I do think it's better to go ahead and go broke in that flop against that guy because he might tend to. I think he's such a fish that he might tend to go broke with basically uh, weaker aces without even a spade or any like ace eight with the eight of spades is gonna go broke there. I miss so much value by just check calling, I think. And if he has like ace queen or ace king without a spade, my like basically the only hand that I do not want to see there is like ace king or ace queen with queen of king of spades, and it's not that big a part of his range. And I'm getting value from weaker hands. Like I'm getting more value from weaker hands actually, and all that stuff. And I'm missing value actually if I don't check raise, and my equity is good. So here, that's another close one. I should have made that video like 2 tables. I think that's wait. I'm just gonna call just for information. I think he's likely to have that, but he could have had air too. Basically, I think it's pretty thin call. Uh, I might found the fault sometimes, but I don't think that against such an aggressive opponent like he's playing right now, basically, uh, it's gonna be a call. I think I pretty much have to call. Got a bit 12 there. Here I'm gonna go ahead and do something I do pretty rarely, but I do it sometimes on these boards. I'm just gonna deal in my C bet in 2 guys. I mean, when I and those 2 guys know me, and I have such a high percentage of like C bets. I think they assume that I'm C betting pretty much all my air range on that flop. So when I do wait for the turn, I think it's likely for them to believe that I might have something like King 10 or Ace Queen or stuff like that, and they might just give up the end. Uh, I'm gonna go ahead and bet, and pretty much never fall against that guy. He's just basically flatting 100% on the button against me. I think it's a strategy so far. That's a tricky turn. But he has so many like floats in his range, I think, and I do not want to go broke that much. And I think check calling like twice is good enough, especially with King of Hearts there. This guy's saying comment that boys, I feel like someone should bet this because it looks like we don't have anyone. He might be right. I'm gonna find out. Here, I'm gonna check call turn for sure. I don't think I have any other options since he's been playing that aggressive. And that river totally sucks. I don't think it hit his range that bad. If he goes ahead, and fires pretty big bet actually, it puts me a very, very, very tough spot. He's okay, he's just fooling around with me, it looks like, but I don't have shit. I do think I have to fold, and this one is so close. Jeez, he's putting me in some tough spots actually. The board are not falling too great for me, and I don't have any time banks. Fuck me. Basically, for me to think that I'm good, I have to think that I don't know. I just don't have enough time to go ahead and assess him. A precise enough range. Like the standard play, of course, is gonna be to fold there because I'm basically beating nothing at all. But I feel like that might should have been a call. Uh, yeah, that probably was a call just because of the like quick Easter egg that we have, and I do think on that board that he's turning basically every single mid pockets into a bluff on turn plus river, and the ace basically doesn't change anything in his range, and he's not valuing that big ever with an ace. If he has the ace, it's gonna be ace X of hearts, and he did have the nut flush anyway, so I probably should have called. Of course, there are tens in his range, but he might raise a 10 just on the flop just because he raised so many flops, and he's likely to believe that I'm full of shit. And there are gonna be flushes in his range, but I do have the King of Hearts blocker there, and he's probably raising the Ace of Hearts, like not flushed around the flop. So yeah, that definitely was a call. I probably would have come up with a call if I had more time. I mean, there are not that many flush combos remaining. There are tens remaining too, and he's gonna have that a lot too. But then again, uh, sorry about that. I just froze. Yeah, he's gonna have flushes, but I do have some blockers with the 10, the jack out there, and my king of hearts are not that many combos of flush remaining with the likeliness of him raising the ace X of hearts on the flop. Uh, and finally, I think on that board he's gonna like turn his hand, any medium pocket pair into a bluff every single time, like 100% of the time, and he might fold with just any two cards sometimes just because he feels like it, just because it's a video, he wants it to be fun. Here I think calling is my only option, the way the hand has been played, and here I think that flop, flopping the flush is my only option too. I think that value would be too thin, with like the 6, 7, 9 out there. There are not that many ace uh, that I'm beating, and I could turn my hand into a bluff. It's kind of fish. I don't think he's even folding ace jack or ace queen there. So, and I do think I have the best hand quite often. So I'm just gonna check, and he had nothing at all. I am going to. I'm hesitating between raising and just. I think I'm gonna slow play flop and just shove turn. That's not the best card, of course, but I do think he's gonna like multi barrel quite a lot, especially when he bet. If he had bet a bit bigger, that would have mean that he could have had like stuff like ace queen with diamond and stuff like that I might lose value against if I'm not. No, that it's not in the replayer. It's actually playing. I'm dumb, but yeah. But I think when he bets so small, he expects me to raise my monsters most of the time because it's such a small bet and the board is so drawy, basically. So when I do check call, he's likely to think that I'm full of shit and I might be drawing and decide to just check shove as kind of a bluff on the turn. So I'm gonna go ahead and check shove turn. I don't think he's going for 3 streets that often, and there are cards that might just kill my action if I don't shove the turn. So I do think I do have to shove the turn, and I got really, really lucky there with my marginal pre-flop call. That exact end. But yeah, his small bet on the flop led me to believe, and I do know this guy, and I do know that he's aggressive and stuff. My small bet, his small bet on the flop led me to believe that he was going for multi-streets most of the time. He's not like firing one. It's not that small actually. I thought it was smaller, so you kind of uh, can forget everything that I said. I think it's pretty much a standard. I don't know why I kind of hallucinated a smaller bet there. Here, I would check back that flop very, very often against most of the guys, actually, with those kings. But against such a fish, it's like value 3 streets pretty easily. He's shown me that he's likely to suck balls at poker a lot. So, yep, that's pretty much it. And I do believe I skipped a couple of hands. And I'm really sorry about that. I was having like way too many spots at once. And if I do revisit this series, I'm gonna revisit it while two tabling. But yeah, I'm just gonna like keep up with where I'm at right now. And like, if you have any questions on hands that I've skipped, just ask so in the forums. So yeah, not much to report there. I think everything else I haven't spoken about is pretty standard. I know that there's that hand with where the board like 5 straighted with my 7-9 that I could analyze a bit more. But I feel like if I start talking about it right now, I'm just gonna screw up. So I'm just, if any of you guys is interested by this, and I'm gonna analyze it more in detail in the forums after the video. So I'm gonna post a thread, of course, and if one of you guys want to know more about this beautiful hand, well, just ask me. Here, I think shoving is gonna be pretty much break even, and I do want to gamble a bit, so I'm just gonna shove. I think he's aggressive enough for me to shove there and for it to be profitable. I do have to balance that. I mean, theoretically, like the best end to go ahead and shove right away and not like 4-bet call or whatever, just shove right away as a 4-bet are gonna be only my small pockets. But I do think that he knows that I'm kind of going to be balanced there. I don't think he expects me to do that only with my small pockets, because I do, like, we both know each other pretty well. So I think he can't go ahead and like call with King Jack because he knows I have a low pocket. So that makes it plus EV, I think. Here I went for a stab on that perfect board for me to go for a stab on. Basically, it crushes my range. We've got a nit on in the blinds. He might not be a nit, but he has the stats of a nit. And we have the guy who's a maniac who's just checked that flop, so he never ever has anything. He's like a fish maniac, so I don't think he ever has anything. So it was perfect board to me to go and try to steal it. And I do think that Crack Monkey, when he check raises that specific board with so many possibilities of me having a hand, I do think he has a pretty big hand himself most of the time. Yeah, a couple of hands that I do want to come back on because I feel like I did not have as much time as I would have liked to, or as in other videos where there were less spots. It's the King King on the 10-10 Jack 10-10 X Jack Ace board with the flush getting there that I ended up folding because I didn't have any time bang. I certainly want to analyze that a bit more deeply. Plus my 7-9 hand where I bluffed the river. And there was another one that I was keeping in mind too, but I forgot it, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to think more about it. So yeah, sorry for just skipping on stuff. Let me come back on that. Here I decide to defend that. I'm pretty much never ever defend that against a under the gun opener. But I feel like it now, so that's what I'm gonna do. I don't think leading has any value there, because basically he's from under gun, and it's not that dangerous of a board, so he could bluff raise me like pretty easily on that flip, especially with the deepness of our stacks. I could go ahead. I think my default play here actually would be to basically go ahead and check raise and bluff my whole stack against pretty much everybody on that board with those positions. I think it's pretty much a great play. But against that specific guy who played back at me like so often in such a short span of time, I wanted to call. Actually, I don't know why I just folded. I'm so retarded. I just totally brain farted. But yeah, whatever. So much stuff happening. I did want to call, but yeah, with all the history that we have, I think plus the fact that he knows that I'm making a video. I think he's likely to calm me down a lot lighter than most of the guys, basically making my like check, raise, and barrel two streets not that profitable. But with those positions, like I was saying, if you have any sort of tight image, this is a perfect example, absolutely perfect example of what I was talking to you about, of trying not to turn your hand face up and kind of sometimes playing backwards against good players just to be very tough to play against and just to show profit, basically, just to make yourself a better player, is to go ahead in here and instead of just like check calling that board, uh, hoping that he pretty much gives up or that you spike your 5 outs, uh, it's to go ahead and use the fact that you do have a blocker with your 5 for pocket 5s, though, so that cuts a couple of combos of sets that you would obviously call you down with every single time. So there are a lot less sets when he like bet calls you in his range. Use the fact that you do have outs against stuff that bet calls that flop, and use the fact that you're deep enough for him to find the fold very often, depending on how the board runs, with something like jacks or queens or any 10, basically, when he like bet calls the flop, and then you keep on firing. If I had, basically, my plan there is that if I have any sort of tight image, and if I'm against any sort of tight player, I'm gonna go ahead and check raise that and fire my whole stack as a bluff, basically every single time. I expect people to fold quite a lot, no matter if the flush gets there or not. I think that exact board is like absolutely perfect for people to fold, actually. Plus the fact if the flush gets there, unless he has a flush himself, which he could have, of course, but your bluff is gonna like work pretty much every single time the flush gets there. So you have basically the thing is you have exactly what he does not expect you to have, unless he expects you to do that kind of stuff. So you avoid like turning your hand face up, like I said, and you make him do mistakes, basically. The problem with so many people when they're defending out of the blind is like they're so afraid of making mistakes themselves that they don't force their opponents into mistakes, and that's a really huge problem in poker. And I'm gonna like go away from my subject just a bit just to talk about that. It's a problem that is so often encountered on guys that are on downswings or was lost confidence in their game and stuff like that. They're so afraid, and you might recognize yourself even at your like A game or whatever. You're so afraid of making a mistake yourself that you don't risk anything, and you don't ever force your opponents into mistakes. And if you don't ever force your opponents into mistakes, by just the whole general concept of not playing 100% of your range like face up is just good enough. It's just good enough to not be that exploitable and to not get raped by the better reg at your limits and stuff like that. Just do stuff sometimes, at least, to force people into mistakes, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You, of course, are gonna make mistakes, but I really believe that this guy's pretty sure I'm gonna like bet a bit weaker just because of this guy's stack size. But I really believe that missing a play once, like here and there, against regulars is just more profitable than never ever trying to make a play, especially if it's a good regular and you feel like he's just exploiting you. No HUDs there, and it's an obvious call, and I flop not a 9. This is pretty interesting spot. This is a spot where, like, of course I'm gonna call the flop pretty much every single time. I could go broke on the flop, but I don't like the idea that much. He checks. That's weird, but I kind of expect that guy to go ahead and check some overpairs that are bigger than mine sometimes. He's gonna check shove draws a lot, but I don't have that good of an equity against draws. And I think by checking back, he expects me to have like pretty much what I have, actually. I don't know how he thinks. That's a pretty tricky spot. If he had bet, I think that's perfect example of a board where even though you won't have the best hand, you do have to at least call once, uh, just because. Even if you don't have the initiative, the board can fuck up so bad for the guy who has the initiative that it's gonna be easy for you to steal it later. Here you bet the turn. I do think I have to call at least a street on the turn pretty much every single time. If he bets river again, that's gonna be a close one. But I do think there are quite a lot of any five in his range. He might have intended to like check shove the flop. I have to stop like raising those hands out of just pure habit against that guy who's just playing back at me every single time. I could just call, but I think I've wasted my flopped flushes for now and 3-bet pots. So I'm just gonna skip that one. I'm gonna check that one. And I'm gonna check back. I don't think I have any value, of course. And I don't like totally hate his play, but I do think that if he checks the flop, it's better for him to do nothing at all there. But yeah, basically, if he had bet the river again, I think there are some five. There are a lot of five. Not a lot, but when I do call the turn, there are some five in my own range. So I probably would have folded because there are quite a lot of fives in his own range as well, because I expect him to like check shove if I pretty often on that board, because when he checks, I'm pretty much firing my total air very, very, very often. So check shoving for him is going to show a good profit there. So I could check call once again, like I said, but I think that guy's good enough that he check shoves like over pairs too very often on that board when he checks. Of course, he's just giving up sometimes, but I'm just trying to assess him a range that's gonna play me back if I do bet. If I'm good against that range, he's gonna have stuff like 6-7, 5-6, any five basically, like ace-5 that's gonna check shove. But I'm not in that good of a shape against that, and I'm pretty much dead against all the other pairs. And I think check shoving an overpair on that board is something that is really, really, really not used enough uh, by most of the players, and I do expect him to be good enough to do that. Basically because here I'm gonna check. I don't think he ever expect me to check a flush draw there when I'm the initial raiser, so I'm gonna check out. And when I check out, I look like more a bit like an ace X low, so he might just shut down his bluffs. And when the flush comes, actually, I've been like dealing C bets, and he's been raising my like delays pretty much every single time so far. So I gotta go ahead, make the same play, and hope that he does that play again, once again, and I have the perfect like disguised hand that I check the flop with. And checking those kind of flops is something that you do want to do against such opponents. Opponents, basically. Here he took some time for calling a turn. I don't think he makes ever like any timing tells and any real event for it to change my decision. I do think he's good enough to watch himself there. I'm gonna go ahead and bet 95. I think he's gonna find some hero calls pretty often with Jack when I do bet 95, especially with the fact that I'm in a video, and the fact that he probably doesn't expect me to have King Queen or any flush for that instance. Like I think if he folds like something like Queen Jack or King Jack, which he is likely to have, it's because he's gonna put me on like ace low that knows that he pretty much has that, so he's like believing that I'm just like betting big trying to pound him basically. But I do think it's a spot where he's gonna find quite a lot of hero calls, because in his mind when I check that flop, I can't really have the flush. I'm gonna have it sometimes. It's not his default read on me for sure when I check that flop. I can have King Queen, but it's not gonna be that frequent. I could have 10 Jack quite a lot, but the tree got there, so my 10 Jack is pretty much useless. So I'm never ever overbetting that. So there are not that many hands in my overbetting value range there. If he takes enough time to read that, I know he's good enough to read that. Past that, it's gonna be like a kind of limiting war. Either I'm bluffing or either I'm going thin with like an ace low or stuff like that, because I do know that he pretty much never has an ace here, given how aggressive the game has been playing so far between me and him. So yeah, we're in a leveling war. I think I'm on the good side of it. I'm very well disguised, and he could really, really, really believe that I'm just trying to make him fold like any 10, any jack that would have called a standard bet there because, yep, that's pretty much it. I think I'm gonna end that video pretty soon actually. I have quite a lot of footage and quite a lot of good footage, and yeah, that's gonna be plenty of stuff to talk about in the forums and stuff. And I would certainly like to go ahead and revisit that series for sure. I think it's been pretty interesting. So even though we haven't had that many spots of like playing out of position or whatever without the initiative, actually I've been like cold called quite a lot. I think I'm gonna go ahead and revisit that later to have more of these spots specifically. I'm just gonna give up here, whatever. And here, I think like Dunkley's with a lot of hair and a lot of stuff that I beat, so I do have to peel one, especially with my backdoor there. And here I am going to go ahead and just barrel off. I'm too tired to think actually. I'm just gonna play it standard. He bets and he bets again pretty big. I do think he's doing that with pretty much. I hate not having time bank. I do think he's doing that pretty much with every single one of his jack. Not every single one, but stuff like Jack 10, Jack Queen, because he knows that he's gonna have value from some lower draws basically. And I'm gonna go ahead and fold just because I'm gonna run out of time once again, and I hate it. But I do think that on that specific board, given the fact, which is really important, that I have the ace of clubs, that cuts a lot of his draws, Dunkley combos, basically. The fact that I have the ace of clubs, he can't have the nut flush draw himself, so that cuts a lot of the end that I'm supposed to beat when he dunk leads. I do think, like I said, it's perfect board for him to go in and dunk lead with like King Jack, Queen Jack, Jack 10. I think it gets a lot of value from all my 9, 10, 8, 10. I do think he's good enough to do that. It's a good board too for him to go ahead and just dunk lead with the nuts basically, and he set Queen 10 if he flopped a strike. So there are a lot of made hands in his range. He's gonna go ahead and dunk lead twice with like King 10 2 and Ace 10 2. But given the fact that there are not that many flush draws left in his range, since I cut with my Ace of Clubs, I think it's pretty very. Whoa! I don't want to fold that, of course. It's very close, but I think that lone Ace of Clubs is. Call. What a bad turn. Oh, yay! Yeah, that lone Ace of Clubs is good enough for me to just go ahead and fold comfortably. I think that's gonna do it for the video, basically. I'm actually not sure because I don't know the guy's game well enough, and that's a good example of how dunk leading puts me into tough spots. And the fact that he's dunk leading and he's a good player and he's able to go ahead and make some dunk leads with a pretty wide range probably in this spot just puts me in a really tough spot with a lot of the range that I'm calling with on the flop. So, and don't believe that I'm going like just calling the flop and losing the hand every time because barrels turned every time. I do think he's gonna give up quite some time. He basically doesn't have nothing. He's probably giving up there. He might go ahead and dunk lead that flop with nothing at all. Plus the fact that if a clubs comes out, I'm like 100% calling turn. And if any four straight gets on the board, it's gonna give me some really interesting options later in the end. So it's not like a spot where I should have folded the flop just basically because I was folding the turn. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and just give up that ace king. Decided not to see bet for no real reason. And here I do think he is like firing wants it with basically 100% of his nothing at all there. And probably giving up thereafter because when I do check all that turn, I look like a 10 more than anything else, and especially on a king river, he's gonna give up most of the time. And there are a lot of draws that, not a lot, but there are some draws that got there on the turn as well. Which he bets again the river. That is a close one. My first guess is that he's valuing like ace 10 or queen 10 or stuff like that. That is my very first guess. And I'm not sure he's ever bluffing there. I expect him to think that I'm gonna look him up pretty light the way like all the action that played earlier and the way that the board pretty much developed on that hand. Oh, I just missed a hand. I do think he expects me to call that river. So I do think he's gonna have a 10 that he's going for value with more often than not. I do think that if he has basically nothing, he's just gonna give up on that king river. But once again, I might be a bit wrong about pretty much everything that I've done against MCC because like no matter how I look at it, he's been playing me back quite a lot, and I've been having a pretty tough time. And I think himself just gave a very good demonstration of how having position on an opponent is really important. And like no matter how good I am, if he's playing aggressively with position on me, uh, he can fuck with me like not as much as he wants, but he can make my life pretty hard basically. So I'm probably should have looked him up a bit more than I did. I ended up like giving him credit every single time, and I might have just got raped totally, just because I was doing so many stuff at once, and I didn't have that much time. So I kind of hate how I handled the aggression of that guy. I might have handled it a bit better if I did not like have so many action going on. But yeah, he just showed us that he pretty much he pretty much did the work that I wanted to do. He pretty much flatted every single one of my openings and found a way to run away. To run away with pretty much every putts that he played against me, even though he did not have the initiative. So of course he was on position against me, but that's like not that much of an excuse. I probably pussied out a couple of times, but once again, he might have had the nuts every single time. That would be very interesting, and I would love him uh, to go ahead and post the hands that he had in the forums for that specific video, and that would make for some interesting discussions. I do think he's a Blue Fire member, so he's gonna probably watch that. If you do that, please like every single hand that we've played against, post your hand, uh, like I said in the forums, and that's gonna be pretty interesting. So thank you guys. I hope that was entertaining, and I think that this lone video is gonna make up for some really interesting discussion. So stay tuned in forums. That is Martin Fournier saying you good night.